Now let's start with the different forms of organization under the public sector. First one being the departmental undertaking. Now a departmental undertaking, it says it's a public enterprise which is run as a part of the government department and under the direction of the minister concerned. Right? Now examples are railways, All India Radio, Doordarshan and defense, etc. In other words, we can say it is just an extension of a particular ministry. We talk about the railway ministry, so Indian Railways is a departmental undertaking. It's a department which comes under the railway ministry. Right? Now features, number one, formation. Fine. It is formed as a department which is to be working under a particular ministry. Fine. It is directly going to be reporting to that particular minister. Its affairs are going to be directly controlled by a particular ministry. Secondly, coming to control. When we talk about control, now as it is a subdivision of a ministry, I just told you, it is just an extension of a ministry, or we can say it's a subdivision of a ministry. So its affairs are under they are always under a scrutiny by the concerned minister. Fine. They are under the direct control of the minister. Next we are coming to the appointments. Right. The employees in these departmental undertakings, they are appointed by the means of UPSC, that is your Union Public Service Commission and staff selection boards. Fine. And the employees are very much government employees. They are considered to be the government employees and will get all benefits which other government employees are going to get. Then coming to the management, they are managed, these departmental undertakings, they are managed by the IAS officers. Okay. Then coming to audit. Audit का मतलब क्या होता है? To check whether the accounts have been made in accordance with the accounting standards or not. कुछ घपला तो नहीं किया है, ठीक है? जितने खर्चे बताए हैं उतने किए हैं कि नहीं किए हैं, जितने इनकम बताई है उतनी एक्चुअली हुई है कि नहीं हुई है, सपोर्टेड बाय द वाउचर्स. दिस इज प्रिसाइसली अ लेमन्स अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ ऑडिट. अकाउंट्स ऑफ departmental undertaking, they are audited by CAG, that is a Comptroller Auditor General of India. Fine. Now coming to finance, it is the entire finance, the funds which are required by these departmental undertakings, they come from the government treasury. ठीक है? गवर्नमेंट का जो एक सेंट्रल बजट बनता है उसमें से इसको एलोकेट किया जाता है पैसा कुछ, जो कि डिपार्टमेंटल अंडरटेकिंग के लिए यूज होगा. फाइन. और जो भी ये कमाई करेगी डिपार्टमेंटल अंडरटेकिंग, व्हाटएवर रेवेन्यूज दे आर गोइंग टू अर्न, दैट अगेन इज गोइंग टू बी पुट बैक टू द गवर्नमेंट ट्रेजरी. तो इसके फंड्स आते भी गवर्नमेंट ट्रेजरी से और जितना ये कमाते हैं वो भी कहाँ जाता है? गवर्नमेंट ट्रेजरी. राइट. देयर आफ्टर administrative autonomy. They don't have any administrative autonomy because they are under a direct control of the minister concerned. Lot of government interference is there. Right. Last is accountability. They are accountable to the concerned ministry, right, as their management is under the direct control of that particular minister. Fine. Now coming to the merits of departmental undertaking, we talk about ease of formation. When we talked about formation, how is it formed? It is formed by just the administrative orders of the government. Fine. It is just formed by the administrative orders of the government. No special act has to be passed in the parliament. Fine. Then effective control. Now as it is under the direct control of the ministry, ठीक है, the control is centralized in the hands of the government. कंट्रोल का जब हम बात करते हैं, इट मीन्स टू ओवरसी कि आपने कितना पैसा इनको एलोकेट किया और कौन कौन से पर्पसेस स्टेट किए गए थे एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. राइट. क्या वो पैसा उन्हीं पर्पसेस के लिए यूज हुआ है कि नहीं हुआ? क्लियर. देन सोर्स ऑफ रेवेन्यू फॉर द गवर्नमेंट, एज आई टोल्ड यू दैट देयर फंडिंग इज ऑल्सो गोइंग टू कम फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट ट्रेजरी एंड द रेवेन्यूज दैट दे आर गोइंग टू जनरेट, दैट इज गोइंग टू गो बैक टू द गवर्नमेंट treasury. So it becomes a source of revenue for the government. Proper utilization of the fund. Now as all the employees are well aware that they are under the direct scrutiny of the government, ठीक है, they are under a particular ministry के अंदर उनका ऑफिस आता है और उनका सारे टास्क जो है they are under close scrutiny. So it leads to proper utilization of funds. They know that the accounts are going to be audited by CAG, so we have to provide a proof कि हमने अगर ये खर्चा किया है तो उसका एक proof भी हम घपला नहीं कर सकते. Clear? Then decrease in tax burden on public. Now taxes क्यों बढ़ते हैं? क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट के पास पैसा नहीं है. टैक्स इज अ सोर्स ऑफ रेवेन्यू फॉर द गवर्नमेंट. नाउ इफ these departmental undertakings, they are able to earn a good amount of revenue for the government, right, then there is a probability that the tax burden on the public may reduce or may not increase. That is also equally good. Then accountability. They are accountable to the government. They are accountable to the public, I should say, through the parliament, as they are established for the public interest. Fine, they are accountable for every single penny that they have spent. Now coming to there are certain demerits of departmental undertakings as well. Number one being rigidity. Fine, they are very, very rigid in their functioning. All they are bothered about is following a particular procedure which has been told to them, or which has been, as they have been directed by the concerned minister, right. They become very rigid in their functioning, as a result of which kya hota hai, that many a times there are so many opportunities in the environment, but if you become rigid, if you become stuck, okay, then you cannot get the benefits of those opportunities which are there in the environment. Second one comes red tapeism. There is a lot of paperwork which is there in these kind of organizations, as a result of which wo kya karta hai, your pace of work is slowed down. Pace of work goes down. Then delay in decision making. Why is there a delay in decision making? Because they are not, the officers of these departments, they are not allowed to take independent decisions. They have to take approval of the government. Only then they can arrive at a decision. So इस सारे प्रोसेस में क्या हो जाता है, एक important decision, see we say that a decision which is not taken on time is considered to be as good as, मतलब it is not a good decision then. ठीक है, decision will have its value, will have the desired impact only when it's taken at the right time. उसके पहले या उसके बाद में उसका impact नहीं होगा जो सोच के हमने वो decision लिया था, right. Then there is lot of political interference, as this form of organization comes under directly the ministry, so definitely there is a lot of political interference, there is a lot of interference of the government in their day-to-day functioning. Insensitive to the consumer needs. Now when we were studying about that what is a departmental undertaking, we said that basically it's a government initiative to provide services to the public at large at reasonable prices, but they go insensitive to the consumer needs. You would have seen, if you take a look at the state of affairs, you know, of our railways department, just because there is no competition, fine, the standards or the quality of the services that they are providing has gone down. It has gone down. They have become insensitive to the consumer's needs. You take a look at the washrooms which are there in the railways. They are in a pathetic state of affair. They are in a pathetic state. Now, why this kind of a thing is there? Because there is no competition. There is no competition. Okay. Then unable to take advantage of the opportunities, as I just told you, that is now this point, unable to take advantage of the opportunity. We can relate this point to rigidity, we can relate this point to delay in decision making, we can relate this point to lot of political interference. Because of rigidity, because of delay in decision making, because of lot of political interference, they are not able to take advantage of the good business opportunities that come their way. Clear? This is all about departmental undertaking. Now coming to the next form of organization, that is your statutory corporations. Now statutory corporations are the organizations which are set up by passing a special act in the parliament, and this special act defines, you know, the rules and regulations which are going to be followed and the objectives of this particular organization. In a layman's language, I can say that the special act defines the periphery within which these organizations are going to work. It defines the circumference within which these organizations are going to work. Now the examples of these statutory corporations will be your Life Insurance Corporation, fine, State Trading Corporation, Metals and Minerals Trading Corporation, and Industrial and Development Bank of India. They all are your statutory corporations. Now these statutory corporations, they have a separate legal entity. They have a separate legal entity, which means they can sue and be sued by others, right? And they can own property in their own name. Clear? And they get all their fundings from the government. They get all, they are financed entirely by the state or the central government, right? Now coming to the first point, that is your features, we talk about ownership. ठीक है, they are owned and controlled by the state and central government. The government has complete authority upon the revenues that these organizations generate and is also supposed to be bearing the losses that these organizations may incur at any point of time. Second point, formation. These statutory corporations, they are formed by passing a special act in the parliament, right? And that act, I said, is going to specify the objectives and the privileges of these statutory corporations. Then it's a body corporate. Body corporate meaning it has a separate legal entity. It's a separate person, considered to be a separate person. It has an entity of its own apart from the it has a separate legal entity, fine, which means it can sue. ये केस कर सकती है किसी के ऊपर, कोई इनके ऊपर भी केस कर सकता है, and they can own assets and property in their own name. Then freedom from government budgetary control. जब आपको गवर्नमेंट एक बजट, सेंट्रल बजट होता है ना, तो उसमें गवर्नमेंट अगर कुछ पैसे आपको एलोकेट किए जाते हैं, they are for a specific purpose, right? The government also specifies that what are the different purposes, क्या डेवलपमेंट्स वो देखना चाहते हैं, किन पर्पसेस के लिए वो पैसा आपको दिया जा रहा है, और उसके ऊपर कंप्लीट कंट्रोल होता है गवर्नमेंट का. दे वांट टू सी वेदर द मनी इज बीइंग यूटिलाइज्ड फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर पर्पस और not. But these organizations, they are free from any budgetary control. Fine, they are not a part of the central budget, right? They do get it from the government, fine, but it's not a part of the central budget, right? Then comes no interference. These are autonomous bodies and government does not interfere with their day-to-day workings. Right? Then coming to the appointment of employees, the employees are appointed as per the rules and regulations which have been specified in the act. Fine, but the employees of the statutory corporations, they under no way are considered to be government employees. They are not government employees, right? Then coming to audit, like departmental undertaking, even accounts of the statutory corporations are audited by Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Financing, the entire financing comes from the state or the central government. Now coming to the merits, what are the merits of statutory corporation? Number one being financial autonomy. Autonomy का मतलब होता है independence. ठीक है, financial autonomy है. Since they are not a part of the central budget, they are free to decide कि जो government के पास से पैसा आया है वो उसको हम कैसे use करेंगे. What are the purposes for which this money is to be utilized, right? Now they do not get their funds from the central budget. The government does not interfere in the financial matters. Secondly, they are autonomous organizations. They have their own policies and procedures. But within the boundary that has been defined by the special act passed in the parliament, right? Then social service motive. The main motive of these organizations is to first serve the public at large, and then they look at making some amount of profit. Fine. Fourth point is more or less the same, protection of public interest. They have full accountability to the government. They have full accountability to the government, right? It is to ensure that the public money is utilized wisely. One point I'd like to mention over here, that we say that entire funding of the statutory corporation, mostly the funding comes from the government. That's what I said. I'd like to add in here, in this point of financing, that it is up to them. If they wish, they may borrow from the public also. They can borrow from the public also by taking out a public issue, right? Now coming to the demerits of statutory corporations. Number one being political interference. अब आपको यहाँ पे काफी सारे ऐसे points मिलेंगे जो कि आपको लगेगा कि पहले तो हमने इसको advantage बताया है और अब हम same point को disadvantage बता रहे हैं. Now number one being political interference. There is, on paper हम बोलते हैं that these are autonomous organizations. Fine, that the government does not interfere in the day-to-day working of the organization, but this exists only on paper. Fine, this exists only on paper. Actually the government does interfere and intervene in its matters, right? The politicians, they have their own benefits in mind whenever the huge funds are involved, so they do interfere to maneuver things in a way that benefit them the most, right? Ignoring service motive. Again, like in the first point we said that the politicians, they have their own personal motives which they are looking at to achieve, right? So अपने personal motive को ज़्यादा importance देके सर्विस मोटिव को इतनी इंपॉर्टेंस मोस्टली नहीं दी जाती है. द डायरेक्टर्स यूटिलाइज देयर इन्फ्लुएंस एंड पावर्स फॉर देयर ओन बेनिफिट इंस्टेड ऑफ सोशल सर्विस. देन देयर इज लैक ऑफ कंपटीशन. लैक ऑफ कंपटीशन है, दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई the employees of such organization, they become really very complacent. Fine. This has led to carelessness and lethargy in their activities. Then misuse of financial autonomy. Now when we say financial autonomy, they don't have any financial autonomy, meaning उनको किसी से डायरेक्शन नहीं लेना पड़ता कि जो पैसा उनके पास स्टेट या सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट में से आया है उसको कैसे यूटिलाइज किया जाए, या उनको कभी पब्लिक इशू करना है या कभी लोन करना है तो दे डोंट हैव टू सीक एनी परमिशन फॉर दैट, राइट. अब एज अ रिजल्ट क्या होता है कि कभी इफ दे टेक लोन्स एट अ हायर रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, पैसा तो उनके पास आ गया बट दे लैंडेड अप पेइंग अ वेरी वेरी हाई रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ विच this is nothing else but we'll say that this is just misuse of money, right? Just because you have been given financial autonomy doesn't mean that you will not act wisely, right? These take loan at high rate of interest to meet urgent requirements due to delay in projects. This leads to increase in the cost of projects. इनका एक हमने बोला because lack of competition है, पहला पॉइंट बोला था lack of competition है, तो इनकी पेस जो है काम करने की बहुत ही धीरे हो जाती है. ठीक है, अगर रेस में आप अकेले ही भाग रहे हो तो चाहे आप तेज भागो या स्लो भागो, आपने ही फर्स्ट आना है, राइट? सेम इज द केस हियर, राइट? सो व्हेन देयर इज लैक ऑफ कंपटीशन द एम्प्लॉइज बिकम वेरी कंप्लेसेंट. अब प्रोजेक्ट खत्म करने की डेट नजदीक आ रही है, पैसा है नहीं, ठीक है, तो मुझे जहां से भी मिल रहा है मैं ले लूंगी, चाहे वो हाई रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट ही क्यों ना हो. अब हाई रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट पे अगर आप लोन ले रहे हो, इससे क्या होगा? कॉस्ट ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट गोज अप, right? It increases the cost of project. Then comes corruption. Now corruption कहाँ से, किससे पॉइंट से हम रिलेट कर सकते हैं? Ignoring service motive. ठीक है, पब्लिक की ना सोचते हुए आप अपनी एक्टिविटीज को ऐसे मनूवर करें that your personal motives are fulfilled. What is this? This is nothing else but corruption. This is nothing else but corruption, right? In public dealings, there is bound to be corruption and these corporations are no exception. Incomplete operational autonomy. Now, I think this fact we have already covered when we said that there is a lot of political interference also. Incomplete operational autonomy, that government, when we say that it does not participate, government does not interfere in its day-to-day working, it exists only on paper. Actually the government does. Then delay in decision making. Now the government generally seeks professional advice, fine, in taking certain decisions. अब उससे क्या होता है? It hinders the pace at which the work should go, right? When you are taking professional advice, fine, तो इससे this leads to delay in decision making. It hinders the freedom of these corporations to enter into new contracts, all right? So therefore it leads to delay in decision making. Now coming to the third form of public sector enterprises, that is your government company. Now how do we define government company? Government company can be defined as a company in which not less than 51% of the paid up share capital is held by either the state or the central government, right? 51%, mind you, 51%, not less than, इससे ज़्यादा भी हो सकता है, but कम से कम 51% of the paid up share capital must be held by the state or the central government in the name of, and the shares किसके नाम पे होते हैं? President of India. ठीक है, बाकी की 49% शेयर कैपिटल जो है वो हम प्राइवेटली ओन कर सकते हैं. फाइन, दैट कैन बी अरेंज फ्रॉम प्राइवेट से भी कर सकते हैं. देन नाउ कमिंग टू गवर्नमेंट कंपनीज आर जनरली ऑफ two types, right? One is your wholly owned government company. Wholly owned government company का क्या होगी? जिसमें कि हमने कहा वहाँ पे कम से कम 51% गवर्नमेंट का होना चाहिए. जहाँ पे 100% गवर्नमेंट का हो जाएगा तो दैट इज अ wholly owned government company, right? And partly owned government company जहाँ पे कि 51% और मे बी 60%, 70% गवर्नमेंट का है, बाकी का जो 30% है दैट इज प्राइवेट. ओके, नाउ एग्जाम्पल्स क्या हैं गवर्नमेंट कंपनी के? हमारा स्टील अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया लिमिटेड, गैस अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया लिमिटेड, देन भारत हेवी इलेक्ट्रिकल्स लिमिटेड, फाइन, स्टेट ट्रेडिंग कॉर्पोरेशन, दे ऑल आर योर एग्जाम्पल्स ऑफ गवर्नमेंट कंपनी. क्लियर? नाउ features formation. It is formed as per the provisions of the Companies Act 2013, right? Then coming to ownership. ओनरशिप में हमने क्या कहा, मिनिमम 51% ऑफ द पेड अप कैपिटल जो है वो किसकी होगी, स्टेट या सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की, राइट? And it says minimum 51% of their paid up capital is in the name of state or the central government, or partly in the name of central government and partly in the name of the state government. It can be wholly owned government company where all shares will be held by the government. It is pretty clear. या minimum 51%, ठीक है, नहीं तो पूरा भी हो सकता, that will be your wholly owned government company. Now management. Now it is managed by the board of directors who have been elected either by the shareholders or by the government. They are going to manage the affairs of the organization. Now next is separate legal entity. Now as it is registered under Companies Act 2013, so it is a separate legal entity, fine, which can sue and be sued in its own name, which can own property also in its own name. Then appointment of the employees. Now its employees are appointed as per its own rules and regulations as specified in the Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association, right? Government has got nothing to do with that. Then audit procedure. It is its accounts, the government company's accounts are subject to your normal audit controls, fine, and the accounts are generally audited by the auditor who has been appointed by the central government on the recommendation of Comptroller and Auditor General of India, right? Then फाइनेंसिंग, सारा का सारा पैसा इसका कहाँ से आता है, यहाँ तो 51% कम से कम आएगा स्टेट और सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट में से, फाइन, एंड द रिमेनिंग इट इज अलाउड टू रेज फ्रॉम द कैपिटल द शेयर मार्केट. Annual report, it is the company, like other companies, right, they are also supposed to be publishing their annual reports and the same is to be presented in the parliament, right? Now coming to the merits of government company. Number one, it is ease of formation. It is formed as per the provisions of the Companies Act 2013. No special act is required to be passed in the parliament for this purpose. Then again, separate legal entity, fine, because it is registered under Companies Act, it has a separate legal entity and can own assets in its own name, can sue and be sued also. Autonomy in operation. It's an autonomous organization wherein they are allowed to work in a manner which they think is fine, which they think is fit and fine, right? Basically they are free to conduct their activities. There are no political interferences, fine, so they can take prompt decision and can also take the advantage of the opportunities, business opportunities that come their way, right? Then they control unhealthy competition. How do they control unhealthy competition? That is by providing goods and services to the customers at a reasonable price, fine. Then easy financing. Now the financial needs of these organizations, they are met by the government. Minimum 51%. Now this is our capital तो तुम्हारी government के पास से आ गई, and the remaining you can raise from the share market also. Okay. Benefits of private participation. Now since the private sector can have share in such companies, professional managers from the private sector can also pitch in these sectors, right? They can be included in the board of directors. They will improve the operational efficiency rather than having only the IAS and all act as a board of directors and these bureaucrats act as a board of directors. Since we have private participation also, right, so we can have professional managers from the private sector taking care of the management to act as one of the board of directors. That will further improve the operational efficiency of the organization. Talking about the demerits, number one, parliament interference. Now we say that the directors जो होते हैं इनके they are nominated by the government, either by the government or by the shareholders. तो जो government nominate कर रही है directors, they are generally your IAS officers, right? Now they are under a lot of political pressure to act in a certain manner or to take certain decisions, fine. So although we say that they have a lot of operational autonomy, but that is actually not the case. Then lack of continuity in policy. Now every board of director, जो एक management है, जो भी board है, हर एक का एक नजरिया होता है काम करने का. Clear? Now as these board of directors, they are elected by the government. ठीक है, एंड गवर्नमेंट कीप्स ऑन चेंजिंग फ्रॉम टाइम टू टाइम। तो अगर गवर्नमेंट चेंज होगी, गवर्नमेंट के चेंज के साथ ये बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स भी नॉट ऑलवेज बट मेनी अ टाइम्स चेंज हो जाते हैं। एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ विच पिछले बोर्ड ने जो पॉलिसीज रखी होंगी, इट इज नॉट नेसेसरी दैट दे आर गोइंग टू, द करंट बोर्ड इज गोइंग टू कंटिन्यू विद द सेम पॉलिसीज, दे मे change the policies. So that is why there is lack of continuity in policies. Then no say of minority private shareholders. As अगर हम वो लें, you know, we take votes for a particular decision, तो हमेशा होगा तो वही जो गवर्नमेंट चाहेगी, right? Because 51% of the paid up share capital is in the hand of the government. Fine, तो प्राइवेट शेयर होल्डिंग्स तो इसमें माइनॉरिटी रही, सो दे डोंट हैव मच ऑफ अ से इन द गवर्नमेंट कंपनी. सो दिस वाज ऑल अबाउट व्हाट अ गवर्नमेंट कंपनी इज. सो हियर वी हैव कवर्ड ऑल थ्री फॉर्म्स ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, दैट इज योर डिपार्टमेंटल अंडरटेकिंग, then statutory corporation which has the benefit of both being a public sector organization as well as some benefits of a private organization also, right? Then we have your government company. After this, the topic that is given in your book is role of public sector, but that I have already covered under the heading of rationale of public sector. That is more or less the same. Now coming to the next topic, that is changing role of public sector. We all know that the new economic policy, it came in 1991. Fine. Now we have only taken about few points from the NEP as to where the role, it completely redefined the role of the public sector. Let us see how what it was. Number one, reduction in the number of areas that were reserved for the public sector undertakings from 17 to 8 in 1991 जब न्यू इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी आई, ठीक है, और जो कि फर्दर रिड्यूस हो गया ओनली टू 3 in 2001. अब वो तीन कौन से हैं? एटॉमिक एनर्जी, आर्म्स एंड रेलवेज. दीज आर दी ओनली 3 सेक्टर्स विच आर रिजर्व फॉर PSUs. इसमें आपका कोई भी प्राइवेट सेक्टर एंटरप्राइज नहीं आ सकती है, right? Secondly, strengthening PSUs. PSUs मतलब public sector undertakings. Strengthening PSUs through MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Fine. The government said that they are going to sign a memorandum of understanding with the management of these PSUs, that the government is not going to interfere in their working. Fine. But the management will definitely owe an explanation in case there are any losses, there are abnormal losses. Right. Then comes setting up of Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction. Right. There were many public sector units which were incurring losses for quite a number of years. Now these units are called as sick units. Fine. So these sick units, they were to be handed over to BIFR so as to see that whether they are to be restructured or they have to be closed down. Fine. Then in continuation, a national renewal fund was set up. Now if these sick units are to be closed down, then what about the employees who are working in these organizations? हमें किसी भी कीमत पे उनका नुकसान नहीं होने देना है. So either they are going to be redeployed in some other PSU, fine, or if they are convinced to take voluntary retirement, ठीक है, VRS की स्कीम, वॉलंटरी रिटायरमेंट स्कीम के लिए ऑप्ट करते हैं, तो उनको पेमेंट कहां से की जाएगी? फ्रॉम द नेशनल रिन्यूअल फंड. Right? Last but not the least, that is disinvestment of shares of selected PSUs. Selected PSUs again which were not doing well, their shares were sold off to the private sector enterprises. That's called as your disinvestment of shares in PSUs.